All right, here we go with 5.9, the last section in chapter 5. Okay, 5.8 was just putting everything, all your factoring together. So I didn't make a video of that. So it's just, all right, you have all these factoring techniques. Let's see you put it into action. Okay, so you do have a homework assignment for 5.8, but you don't have any notes for 5.8. Okay. All right, so just make sure you always start off with a common factor, see if there's anything there. All right, 5.9, take notes. Solving equations by factoring. Okay, so I'm going to do this in two videos. Okay, so the first few examples will be pretty straightforward to medium difficulty, and then the second video will have more complex problems. Okay. All right, so zero property. That's what we're going to be using here. We're going to be factoring and then using the zero property. Okay, so I'm going to factor. We're going to use the zero property. And I will go over what the zero property is in a second. Okay, so the zero property. So it's pretty straightforward. It says that if you are multiplying two things together, whatever they are, let's call the first thing A, and let's call the second thing B. If you're multiplying two things together, right? So if you multiply them and you get 0, what can you tell me? If you multiply these two together and you get 0, what can you tell me? One of them must be 0, right? And that's what the zero property says. Then one of these has to be a 0, because 0 times, if A is 0, B can be anything, but 0 times anything is going to be 0, right? Or if B is the one that's 0, A can be any number, and any number times 0 would be 0, right? So if you are multiplying two things together, if you're multiplying things together, and it equals 0, one of those things has to be 0, okay? One of them has to be 0. So this is true for 0. It's not true if you have, like, you don't have to copy this down, but if you have A times B equals 6, okay, it's not true here that, oh, A times B equals 6. Well, one of them must be 6. That's not true. This could be a 2. That could be a 3, right? This could be a 12. That could be a 1/2. Right? So there are all these different possible cases for these numbers. One of them does not have to be a 6, okay? But here, if it equals 0, one of them has to be 0, okay? So up here, set equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to do that first. And then you can factor, and then you can use the 0 property, okay? All right. So, for example, if you have this times this, and it equals 0, then one of those must be 0, right? Then this equals 0, or this one equals 0, right? If I solve, that one's already solved, but here, subtract 1 on both sides, so x equals -1, right? So if we plug 0 in, I get 0 times 0 plus 1 is 1. I get 0 plus 0 times 1. 0 times 1 is 0. If I plug in negative 1, I get negative 1 here, but over here, I get 0. Negative 1 times 0 is 0. Okay, so we have two answers here. X equals 0 or x equals negative 1. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Suppose that I have these two factors, x minus 3, 2x minus 5. And when I multiply them, I get 0. Okay, if that's the case, then we know that, oh, well, then this must be 0 or this one must be 0, right? If we solve each equation, here I would need to add 3 to both sides. I get x equals 3, right? So if I plug in 3, I get 3 minus 3, so I get 0 here, and who cares what I get here, right? I actually get 2 times 3 is 6, minus 5 is 1. I actually get 1 inside here, so I get 0 times 1 equals 0, okay? If I add 5 here, I get 2x equals 5. If I divide both sides by 2, I get x equals 5 halves. If I plug in 5 halves, well, it doesn't matter what I get over there because over here, the 2's will cancel and I get 5 minus 5, which is 0. 0 times anything is 0. Okay? And let's take a look at this here. So let's take a look at this one. X plus 1 times x minus 2 equals 3. Okay, because I see students do this. Okay, they go ahead and think that, oh, well, x plus 1 equals 3 or x minus 2 equals 3. Is that true? No. Okay, this is not 0. So this and this are not necessarily true. Okay? You can only apply that property if this is 0, if it equals 0. Okay? All right, so let's take a look. So if you notice here, what you're going to be doing is setting it equal to 0, factor, and then solve each factor. Factor, and then solve each factor. Okay? Factor, well, not this one. That's a non-example. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's do the solving. All right, so example 1. Let's go ahead and solve x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to bring it down here. All right, so first thing you want to do, make sure it's set equal to 0. And it is. That way we can use the 0 property, right? Okay, so it's set equal to 0. So now we can go ahead and factor x times x to make x squared. We want positive 6. We want positive 6, so the signs have to be the same. This tells me they'll both be positive. And it's 3 and 2. And if you check, you get 5x for the middle. All right, once you factor, you take each factor, x plus 3, set it equal to 0, and solve. Subtract 3 on both sides, so x equals negative 3. Or take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. And there are your answers. X equals negative 3, x equals negative 2. Okay? All right, let's take a look at another one. And you can always check these. You know, if you plug these in, right? If you plug it into the original equation and work it out, you'll get 0. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this one. Let's solve 3x squared equals 6x. Okay, so again, make sure it's set equal to 0. It is not. Okay, so we need to move this over to this side, right? That will give us our 0. Okay, now we have our 0. So now you can factor. So this one is common factoring. They both have 3x in common. And I get x minus 2. All right, so take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. Or x minus 2 equals 0, solve. So x equals 2. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Solve 9x squared minus 25 equals 25. Okay, so 9x squared equals 25. Again, this does not say equals 0, so I need to fix that. So I need to subtract 25 over here on both sides. That way I get my 0. And I get 9x squared minus 25 on this side. Okay, those are perfect squares. So when I factor it, it's going to be 3x plus 5, 3x minus 5. Okay, and take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. Divide both sides by 3. So x equals negative 5 over 3. Same thing with this one. 3x minus 5 equals 0. Add 5 to both sides. 3x equals 5. Divide both sides by 3. And x equals to 5 over 3. Okay. Let's take a look at this one. Example number 4. Let's solve x equals 6 over 5 minus 6 over 5x squared. Fractions, right? That good old F word. Okay, clear fractions and multiply everything by the LCD. Okay, so if you are worried about those fractions the way you were worried about them in systems of equations, remember you can always clear them when you have an equation. An equation has to have an equal sign, or else it's an expression. Okay. Actually, before I do that, let me write it down here. X equals 6 over 5 minus 6 over 5 x squared. All right, so we're going to go ahead and clear fractions first. We're going to get rid of them. And we do that by multiplying by the LCD, which in this case is 5. Okay, I'll use blue. So you have to multiply everything by 5. So even the ones that are not fractions. And when you do that, the fractions cancel. Okay, and that looks like it. Okay, so here I get 5x equals, there's a 6 there, and there's a minus 6x squared there. Okay, now set it equal to 0, right? Set it equal to 0. I'm going to move everything to the left side. Okay, so I have to do the opposite operation. Negative 6. So subtract 6 on both sides. So I get 5x minus 6 equals negative 6x squared. All right, let me move this one. So I'll add 6x squared to both sides. That will get me my 0. I'm going to put it in order. So 6x squared goes first, 5x goes next, negative 6 goes last. All right, and then we factor this. Okay. I'm going to go with 3x and 2x to make 6x squared. The signs have to be different. We can fix it later. And let me try 3 and 2 as well. So let's try 3 here. No, can't do 3 there. Let's do 3 here and 2 here. Okay, so let's check our middle term. There I get negative 9x. And here I get plus 4x. That gives me negative 5x. And what do I want? Oh, I want positive. So let's just go ahead and change the signs. So this one here becomes negative, and this one here becomes positive. All right, so that works. And so now take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. Add 2 to both sides. I get 3x equals 2. Divide both sides by 3. So x equals 2/3. Do the other one. 2x plus 3 equals 0. Solve. Subtract 3 on both sides. 2x equals negative 3. Divide both sides by 2. X equals negative 3/2. Okay, so here are your 2 answers. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's end here, and I'll do the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 examples in the next video. Okay, they're a little bit more challenging.